What's up YouTube, it's VyPr Sports here, and today we're going to be talking about quarterbacks. There are a lot of NFL teams who may end up with a different starting quarterback next season than the one they had this past season. So in this video, we're going to spin the wheel of quarterbacks for each of these teams and see who their starter will be next season according to the wheel, and then talk about the likelihood of this actually happening. So without further ado, let's get into it with our first spin on the wheel of quarterbacks, and that is going to be for the New York Giants. So let's see, spin the wheel. And the Giants get Ryan Tannehill. We have Ryan Tannehill going to the New York Giants, which in order for this to happen, Tannehill would have to be cut by the Miami Dolphins. If the New York Giants decide to draft a quarterback, I don't see this happening. They'd have Eli Manning as their backup most likely, and then whichever quarterback they draft starting. This could be Dwayne Haskins, Kyler Murray, or somebody else in the draft class such as Drew Lock or Daniel Jones. But if the Giants decide not to draft, which is what I would do if I was in their position, I would be going for Alabama tackle Jonah Williams to build the offensive line and then draft a quarterback next year, potentially someone very good out of that draft class, like Justin Herbert from Oregon, or maybe even wait 2 years to try to get Trevor Lawrence from Clemson. And if they decide to do this, then I think there's a chance it would happen. Tannehill would be a very good one-year solution for the Giants, but if they decide to go long-term in drafting a quarterback, I don't think this is going to happen. So for our next wheel spin, we are going to be finding the quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that player will be Daniel Jones, quarterback out of Duke. Daniel Jones to Jacksonville is honestly a surprising move that I don't really think will happen. But if it were to, I think it would definitely involve the Jaguars trading down in this year's draft. I think odds are they're going to try to sign a veteran quarterback in free agency, whether that's someone like Nick Foles or try to get someone who's been cut like Case Keenum. They're definitely looking for a veteran at quarterback, and I think there's a good chance that they draft a quarterback as well, but they're going to want a veteran guy to be ahead of whoever they draft. Daniel Jones, odds are, won't be a Jaguar. The other situation where I could see this happening is if other teams trade up to get quarterbacks, which I find somewhat unlikely. This year's quarterback class is not the best, and especially compared to last year, not really that great. But if teams do decide to trade up, or the Jaguars decide to trade down, I think there's a chance that Daniel Jones could land in Jacksonville. But I don't think he would be their starter next season. Maybe in a few years, but he's not going to be their starter next year. Next up on the wheel is the Miami Dolphins. Their quarterback this past season was Ryan Tannehill, and they are going to get Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater to the Miami Dolphins is actually pretty likely. He's still somewhat young, he's only 26 years old, and he's actually from the Miami area, which adds more potential for this actually happening. Most importantly, we don't really know how good he truly is because he hasn't played that much since his injury back in 2016. This means that the Dolphins could easily sign him to a pretty team-friendly deal. If he doesn't turn out to be that great, then it's not a huge commitment for the team. But if he plays very well, then they'd be at a huge advantage. I think there's a chance that Miami drafts a quarterback with their pick this draft, and that guy would probably sit behind Bridgewater in the depth chart, but could easily pass him up depending on how he plays, much like how Sam Darnold did in New York with the Jets. Overall, I think there's a pretty good chance that Teddy Bridgewater signs with the Miami Dolphins this NFL offseason. So next up, we have the Washington Redskins, who are in a very interesting situation with their quarterback. Alex Smith suffered a horrible leg injury this past season, and odds are will be out the entire 2019-2020 season because of it as well. This means there's a possibility that they draft someone or sign a veteran via free agency. So let's see what the wheel says they're going to do. Ryan Tannehill spun on the wheel, but since we already had him going to the Giants, we're going to spin again and see who the Redskins will get. That player is Eli Manning. This is not going to happen. Eli Manning to the Redskins, there is no chance that it does. Eli is going to be the Giants' backup quarterback next season, or maybe even their starter, depending on what they decide to do with their draft pick. And the Redskins most likely will draft or sign a veteran quarterback via free agency. And even if Eli did get cut by the Giants, I don't see the Redskins deciding to pick him up. So there's little to no chance that Eli Manning to the Redskins actually happens. The next team spinning on the wheel will be the Arizona Cardinals. Last season they had Josh Rosen as their starting quarterback, who they drafted with the number 10 pick. But because of their new head coach Cliff Kingsbury having a connection to Kyler Murray, one of the top quarterback prospects in this year's draft, they may end up deciding to go with somebody different. So let's spin the wheel and see what they say. And the wheel gives them Derek Carr, quarterback for the Oakland Raiders. So unless the Arizona Cardinals want to win now, I highly doubt that Derek Carr will be their starting quarterback next season. Carr's contract is a lot, and I don't think the Cardinals will really be willing to take this on. And unless Arizona's willing to give up draft picks, I don't think that Derek Carr would get traded there. There have been rumors that Derek Carr is going to get traded to some team that is in need of a quarterback. I just don't think that the Arizona Cardinals will be it. They're going to be looking to draft a quarterback with a very high pick in this year's draft, possibly Kyler Murray, or they'll just stick with Josh Rosen, who they had this past season. But either way, I don't see Derek Carr being their quarterback next season. The Denver Broncos recently traded for Ravens quarterback Joe Flacco, but this doesn't mean that their quarterback position is necessarily fixed. Let's see what the wheel says for them. And the wheel is going to give them Drew Lock, quarterback out of Missouri. Now there's actually a really good chance that the Denver Broncos decide to draft Drew Lock with the number 10 pick. They're reportedly interested in drafting him, and it would make sense. He seems like the kind of guy who, after a year or two on the bench behind Joe Flacco, could potentially turn into a franchise quarterback for the Broncos. That's been something they've really been lacking since they had Peyton Manning a few years ago. Brock Osweiler didn't turn out, and neither did Paxton Lynch or Trevor Siemian. And this year, their quarterback position was a mess with those guys. So I think there's a very good chance that they end up drafting a quarterback. Case Keenum probably will not be on the team this year. I think he's most likely going to get cut. So that we'll have Joe Flacco starting and Drew Lock on the bench. I think this gives them a possibility for a very good future at quarterback. So the Bengals' current quarterback is Andy Dalton. But I think given new head coach Zach Taylor's experience with the LA Rams, there's a possibility that the Andy Dalton era may come to an end, which is why the Cincinnati Bengals are on this list. Let's see who the wheel gives them. Now they got Teddy Bridgewater, and since he's already been taken, we're going to spin again. And they get Blake Bortles. Given the choice between Blake Bortles and Andy Dalton, I'm taking Andy Dalton. Blake Bortles will not be a quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars next season. I think it's most likely that he's going to get cut. And while the Bengals may be the team that decides to pick him up, it will definitely not be to be their starter. Bortles may be a very good backup in the NFL, but he's by no means a starter and will not be the starting quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals next season. Next up, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and although they do have Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback, they may be looking for another short-term option. Teddy Bridgewater has already been taken. Let's spin the wheel again. Drew Lock has already been taken. We're going to spin the wheel again, see who they get, and they get Case Keenum, quarterback for the Denver Broncos last season. Assuming Case Keenum gets cut by the Denver Broncos, I don't see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers being the team to sign him. They already have enough of a quarterback controversy with Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick, and with Bruce Arians as their head coach, I don't see them taking a third guy to put into that mix. Overall, I see Keenum being on a roster next season, just not one of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Our final wheel spin is for the Oakland Raiders, who had Derek Carr as their quarterback last season, but given Gruden's history of trading players recently, we don't know how that's going to go. So let's see who the wheel decides to give them. Josh Rosen, quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals last season. Josh Rosen to Oakland would be a very surprising move if this happened. Earlier, the wheel said that Derek Carr would be the quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals, so given this, I guess there could be a one-for-one trade for Rosen and Carr. However, I think for this to happen, there would have to be draft picks involved going to Arizona. Odds are Arizona would want one of Oakland's 3 first-round picks, and we don't necessarily know what Gruden is up to in Oakland. I think there's a very slim chance that he would be willing to give up one of those first-round picks, though. So overall, I think there's a very small chance that Josh Rosen will be the quarterback for the Oakland Raiders next season. But if he is, it would probably be because Derek Carr is the quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals. It's really built on that one condition, and I don't think that condition is going to be met. So there you have it, guys. That was the Wheel of Quarterbacks. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you're new. Please comment your thoughts in the comment section below whether you think any of these predictions will actually come true. This has been VyPr Sports, and I will see you guys in the next video.